Hey, it's Aaron Kushler. Welcome back to the channel. On this channel, we explore the strategies and tools that help us live healthier, happier, and more fulfilled lives. Today, we're going to be looking at how to improve your squats, and more specifically, how to improve your ankle flexibility so that you can get lower into the squat and so that it doesn't feel like you're going to fall over backwards. We'll look at how to take your squats from this to squats that look and feel more comfortable, kind of like this. So why are the ankles causing you so much of a problem anyway? Well, when our ankles are really tight and they don't move as they should, or they don't have the mobility that they should, the rest of our body has to adapt and compensate to make up for a lack of mobility. In this clip, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Here we go. I'm demonstrating what happens if you've got tight ankles. So as you can see, my hips have to shoot far back and my torso has to lean right over because my knees aren't able to travel any further forward because the ankles don't allow it. Here I'm demonstrating what happens if we do increase the flexibility of the ankles, which is what we're aiming to do, and therefore it changes the whole position of our squat. It makes us sit more upright, we're less likely to fall backwards, and it feels a lot more comfortable. Now, in order to fix this, we have to stretch the calves a little so that we get the extra range of motion in the ankle that we're supposed to have. Typically, most of us have stretched our calves before using a stretch that looks like this. Now, this is not a bad stretch, but it's not really going to help you when it comes to squatting. There's really two muscles that make up the calf. One of them, the gastrocnemius, crosses over two joints, the ankle and the knee, which is why sometimes when you're doing a hamstring stretch, you often feel it behind the knee or sometimes in the top of the calf. The other muscle, the soleus, only crosses one joint, the ankle, and it attaches into the lower part of your leg. Now, this is the muscle that we want to target because this is the one that often gets super tight from sitting down. We're either doing runs, we're doing activities where we're climbing stairs, things where we're doing things all the time, but we're not really stretching this muscle out, so it gets super tight. Therefore, what happens is it limits the range of your ankle, and therefore that influences your squats. So in order for us to actually target the soleus specifically, we have to have a bent knee so that it takes the tension off the gastrocnemius. We also want to first test and see if there is a difference between your right and your left ankle, because quite often one side is more tight than the other, and therefore our body compensates further up if there is a tightness. So we want to make sure that if one side is different from the other, we know to focus more attention slightly to the tighter side to increase that range equally. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to go about testing your ankle flexibility using these simple tests that you can do at home. Now I'm going to show you how to test the ankle flexibility between right and left. All you're going to need for this test, you want to do it in bare feet if possible, which is going to give you a more accurate picture. Sometimes the shoes close around the ankle and can restrict some of the movement. So first of all, you want to take your shoes off. Once you've got your shoes off, then what you're going to need is just a tape measure and a pencil just to mark the distance away. What you can also use is either a wall or a box like I've got here. If you are using a wall, just be mindful of the skirting board along here. We want it to go straight down to the ground and come out so that we can measure an accurate measure. What you're going to do is measure 100 mil away from the wall and just put a small line on the ground. That's going to be your marking point. From there, what we're going to do is place our big toe up right against that line. Okay, so here against that line, and all we're going to do in this position is try to push our knee as close to the box as we can go. All right. If we can get all the way, that means we've gone at least 100 mil. That's indicating that you've got pretty good ankle mobility anyway, and it could be an issue somewhere else. Some things to consider when doing this. If we're pushing forward and our knee starts to travel inwards, that's going to give us a false reading. We want to make sure that our knee stays straight forward as we're doing this and coming towards the box. Okay, the other thing that can happen as well is if you've got really tight ankles, the heel might actually lift up off the ground. So if we're stretching forward and we've got really tight ankles, that heel might lift up, which is not what we want to do. So again, placing our foot right up to the line, we're trying to get our knee as far forward as we can. If we can touch the box, we've got ample mobility. Do that on both sides. So you want to do the exact same thing on the other leg, placing your foot up to the line. And then from there, we're just pushing our knee forward, trying to get to the box. If we can get to the box, great. If not, we want to take note of that. What you can do as well to gauge how much flexibility you're getting from the exercises I'm about to show you is to actually measure how far away from the box or the wall you actually are. So the easiest way to do that, go as far as you can and then just get a rough measurement. So, whatever it might be, take a note of that, and we aim to decrease that as we go, so that way I'm actually making progress. Now that we know what we're up against, and if we have a difference between right and left, now we need to go about releasing all of the tension around the soleus to actually free up that ankle so that it can move properly. I'm going to show you 2 different stretches that you can do to start releasing some of the tension and free up this muscle so that you have more range of motion. The stretch I'm about to show you is going to really help stretch out that soleus muscle, which is the one that we're talking about. The main thing with this is, although you see me using a lot of tools doing this stretch, you can do this same stretch just simply on the ground, replicating the exact same thing. So all we're going to do in a moment is put some weight on our knee and let our knee come forward while trying to keep the heel on the ground. If you have access to things like bands, boxes and kettlebells or dumbbells, then you can do this full stretch. But even if you don't, you can still do a modified version of this stretch as well and still get a benefit from it. So what I've done is I've got a band linked up to a low point. I've then got a box that I'm going to put my leg up onto, and then I'm also going to use a kettlebell. What we're going to do, we're going to put our foot into the band and bring it up onto the box here. Okay, the band we want to put in the crease of our foot. This is going to keep our heel down onto the box the whole time. From here, what we're going to do is basically like what we did in the test. We're going to push our knee forward while the band's pulling our heel down, and we should start to feel a stretch in the back of the soleus here towards the Achilles. And we're going to keep going until we can't go any further, and we're just going to hold it for time. If this is pretty easy, what you can do as well is lift up a kettlebell and put that on your ankle as well, and that's going to push down and increase the stretch on the soleus. Okay, so we're just holding this for about 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll switch over to the other side. So as I said before, if you don't have a box, band and kettlebell, no stress, you can just do this on the ground. You can essentially just put your foot on the ground, making sure that heel stays on the ground, and then push forward and try to keep the heel on the ground the whole time, and we should start to feel the stretch here. A lot of the times with this one, what I find when clients do it this way is their heel does tend to come up because they've got quite a lot of tightness here. So having that extra support at the bottom, pulling your foot down, and then adding weight on the top is really going to help. All right, so the next stretch that I'm going to show you is again using some bits of equipment. I understand a lot of people probably don't have access to some of these things. However, if you can replicate it as closely as possible and use a heavy enough weight, you'll get a massive difference in terms of the mobility in your ankle. The ankles are a really, really strong muscle, and when they get really tight, they're quite resistant to stretching out. So we've got to use something relatively heavy. I've got a dead ball here. If you don't have one of these, something quite heavy is going to be needed to stretch these muscles out. If you have little kids, get one of them to sit on your knees as you do this. So what I'm doing is I'm sitting on a box. You can use a bench, anything, a chair even. And then I'm also raising up using these mats here, a little bit of a platform for my foot to sit on. I'm gonna put the forefoot onto that platform so that my heels can actually drop down. Once they're here, we're going to be putting weight onto the knees and allowing those heels to come down as low as we can. And since we're in a bent knee position, we're still targeting that muscle that we need to. So all I'm going to do from here, I'm going to pick up my weight, put my feet onto the mats, and then I'm just going to sit the weight out onto my knees and then allow my heels to come down towards the ground. Okay, Once we're in this position, it's reasonably comfortable. It's getting into that's a bit of a challenge. However, it's going to give you the biggest benefit. To actually help stretch it, from time to time, what you want to do in this stretch is actually lift up your feet and then slowly relax and let them come down even further. So you're going to lift up and then come down even further. So as with the other calf stretch, as I said before, again, if you don't have all of this equipment, you want to try and mimic it as closely as possible. This you will see a really big benefit if we're doing it quite often. Just a couple of the mistakes that I see when people do this is they're not using a heavy enough weight doing it, and therefore they're not really feeling it. If you're just sitting your feet there and you're trying to press them down, it's actually not enough weight for your calves to really stretch out. As I said before, they're quite a tight muscle and they're very, very strong. So we do need to have some external weight to press down. To see the greatest benefit from this and to see pretty fast progress with it, we want to do these stretches quite often. The calves get used a hell of a lot throughout the day, which means they get really tight, really fast. And if we're not stretching them often, it's just going to quickly come back and it's just going to prevent us from actually improving it. So to start with, hold each stretch for 1 to 2 minutes on each side and aim to do this about 3 times a week. If you do it this often, I guarantee you're going to start to see some improvements in your mobility in your ankles, and therefore as a result, your squats will start to improve as well. Now that we've tested the difference between the ankles, we've stretched them out, you need to essentially retrain the movement. If we've been doing the same thing for quite a long time, our nervous system gets used to doing it that way. So it's pretty hard to change initially, and we often go back to what we know. So what we need to do in place of that is retrain the movement once we've got the extra range of motion there, so that we can adapt and learn this new way of squatting with our new range of motion, which is going to mean that the problem doesn't come back in future. I suggest straight after you finish stretching them out to do 3 sets of 10 air squats just in place, just your own body weight, really slow and controlled, making sure that you're coming down and letting those knees come forward while keeping your knees pressed out as well. And the more we do this, the better we're going to get at it, the more we're going to see faster improvements with our squats, not only because we're getting more range of motion in our ankles, which allows us to get into the position, but number 2 is we're retraining the movement. So we're eradicating our old ways of doing things and focusing on retraining that movement so that it is better form with that new range of motion. So there we have it. That's a simple process that you can use to increase the range of motion in your ankles and as a result, improve your squats. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor and like the video, as well as subscribe to the channel and even share it with a friend if you think that this might help them out too. Guys, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you next time.